remember I said I was always a saver. So whatever job I had, I always saved 10% in an IRA, and I bought company stock.
Welcome back to the Generous Girl podcast. I'm Kim Moeller, your host, and this is part 3 of a 3-part series where we are spotlighting women doing well. And today we're talking about your plan for generosity. I think you're going to really be excited and encouraged that you're here and you meet my guest, Jill Johnson. What a gal, what a story, just wonderful plan for generosity, the way she has been so generous with her time, her talents, her treasures. And it just makes me want to move to that next step of giving and see what God can do. And I think it will motivate you as well. So thanks for joining. Welcome back to the Generous Girl podcast. It's wonderful to have you listening and to meet my amazing guest, Jill Johnson. Jill is the mother of 4 amazing kids and went back to school to become an engineer later in her life and had an incredible career as a teacher in the STEM area. And I really want you to meet her and hear her story because of how she has been really encouraged to be a saver in her life and has resources that she wants to be generous with, and she is generous with. But you've got to hear her story of how she got to where she is. And when I listen to her, it just encourages me to take the next step with what God has entrusted me with, and so that I can be wise with stewarding what he's given me. So welcome, Jill Johnson.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, it's great to have you. And as I said previously, this is the 3rd of a 3-part series with women doing well. And we talked previously about somebody's purpose, and then we talked about passions and what someone is passionate about in that season of life. And this 3rd pathway, or not pathway, but 3rd pillar is the plan. And what is a person's plan for generosity? And all 3 of these things, the purpose, the passions, and the plan, fall within the pathway. So I know you're a facilitator also with Women Doing Well. And I'd love to hear your story of how you got connected with Women Doing Well as we get started.
Well, we actually need to go back to my childhood. And I grew up in an alcoholic family. My mom was a secretary. My father was a truck driver. And I was the middle of 6 kids. Money was very scarce. At Christmas time, our Christmas tree would come from the school back then. All elementary classrooms had a Christmas tree in our classroom, and whoever didn't have one at home could take home the school tree. So we either got it from school, or on December 24th, we'd go out and get one when they were giving them away for free. And then we constantly had bill collectors calling, and us kids would have to say our parents weren't home. But unlike my parents, I was a born saver. And as soon as I got money, birthday money, babysitting money, I saved it. And then my parents even borrowed from me.
Wow.
My father was a violent drinker. And so he'd come home at 2 a.m, get everybody up out of bed, and either smack one of us or we had to clean the house.
Wow.
So, but despite that chaotic behavior, my parents also modeled generosity. Our friends were always welcome to come to eat over, to sleep over. Sometimes my brother's friends would stay for weeks. My dad was always fixing people's cars, usually for a few beers. My mom volunteered at her secretary organizations, and they volunteered us kids to help with neighbors and mowing lawns. So, and my mom was brought up in a Christian home, so she brought us to church. And my grandma had told me, because I was the only child dedicated, that she said God had his hand on my life.
Mm.
And I was really close to an aunt who was a Christian, and she really led me and helped me to see how to follow Christ. So when I was younger, I wanted to become a nun. I didn't know you had to be Catholic. And when I was 12, I went forward in a church service to become a missionary. But I think that solidified my deep longing for missions and to, be a part of helping the Lord.
Wow. He had his hand on you from such an early age.
Yeah. But despite all that, I married young, probably to get out of the house. I married at 19 to a boy from church, and I was devastated when he left me and our 4-year-old son after 7 years of marriage. And I remarried a year later to a very sweet, kind man, but he was a closet alcoholic. And we had 3 more kids, a lot of empty promises, DUIs. We had child protection in our life. Mm. And after my brother-in-law, my husband's brother, died of alcoholism at 36, I was convinced my husband would also die young. So I went back to college to get a degree, and I knew I had to support my family, so I chose engineering. So I ended up working full-time. I went to school full-time, and I raised 4 kids.
Say that again. Like, you raised 4 kids, you chose engineering, not sociology. Like that is huge, Jill. I am so proud of you, honestly.
Well, I knew I had to raise those kids. And so sadly, even after 23 years, that marriage also ended in divorce. I worked as an electrical engineer for a packaging company in R&D. And our customers were worldwide, so I traveled a lot. And my mother-in-law lived with me and helped me with the kids. And then when she died, I changed careers, and I chose teaching. And I taught at an inner city school district and at a local community college.
Wow. So, and then you had summers and you had more availability with your kids in that new role, probably.
Yeah, you would think so, but I ended up working summers. That's when I would teach at the community college, and I would have STEM camps. That's where volunteer work came in. My mom taught us about volunteering, so I was always a Girl Scout leader, Sunday school teacher, VBS teacher, children's room mom. I loved Art Masterpiece. But remember, I said I was always a saver. So whatever job I had, I always saved 10% in an IRA. And I bought company stock. So compound interest, and being a math teacher and an engineer, compound interest is just a wonderful thing.
Yes.
After you have a couple of $100,000 in savings, your money starts working for you. You're not working for money. Your money's working for you. And I love to tell this story to my students of 3 workers, Mike, Jackie, and Terry. They had the same job, same salary, same 8% interest rate, and same retirement date. Mike and Jackie started saving at 20 years old. Mike saved 3% for 40 years. Jackie saved 15% for 15 years, but then she quit to raise her family. But she left her money in the IRA. And Terry, well, he waited till he was 45 years old, but saved 30% of his salary. Well, who had the most money when they reached age 60? Jackie, because of compound interest. And then, of course, I'd show my students the math calculations. So at retirement, I was pleasantly surprised to find Social Security and my pensions, because I got one from the high school and from the college, and they completely covered my paychecks. My IRA, which I no longer now needed, had grown rather large, but I didn't realize how large until my financial advisor told me my RMDs, which are required minimum distributions, would be in the range of 300 to 400,000 a year in my late 70s and would be taxed at 50%.
So meaning for the listener, once you've been saving all this money in your IRA and it's growing tax-free, or you can do a Roth IRA where you're putting in the money after it's been taxed, either way. But if it's before tax money, at some point, once you reach 70 and a half, and now they've made that older actually up until 74 years old, they require you to take a piece of that money out. They're saying no longer can it just all sit there tax deferred. They want a piece of it, which makes sense. So then you have to take the money out of your IRA, and that's what the RMD stands for. It's required that you do so. And it's really important when someone's retired to figure out the best strategy, because you need money to live. You still want to be charitable. And how does somebody access the different, pots or pools of money? So just to do a little educational commercial.
Well, we always like to educate our people. Well, I always felt like my IRA was God's money, because when I was tithing and raising my family, I just tithed off my take-home pay. And in my head, I said, my IRA savings are going before salary and taxes, or from salary and taxes. So I planned on giving my tithe later, that tithe plus, once I needed to take the money out. Now that I've matured in my faith a little bit, I really realize it's all God's money. It's not mine, and He's just blessed me beyond my wildest dreams. My children are my greatest loves, and they all grew up to be sweet, kind, God-loving adults. And despite growing up with dysfunctional parents, because I am a workaholic and my husband was an alcoholic. But now my problem, which I'm working with my financial advisor, is how to give my IRA money away efficiently as possible with the least amount of taxes. So back in 2020 and 2021, during that pandemic, Congress passed a law that you could give 100% of charitable donations would be tax-free. And so my financial advisor called me and said, I know you're charitable. Why don't you give a lot of money away? So I had 1 month to plan to give away hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
fun.
Well, it
fun but challenging.
Fun,
no, it's hard.
But
You're right.
It really is a hard decision. I don't know what. Anyways, I gave to church. I met a pastor who's doing work in Haiti, so I have money given to him. I set up a fund for called the Shepherd's Fund, and it's specifically for pastors when they need money. And then I also gave to Hope International.
Oh, nice.
I actually put things out on Facebook saying, where do you give money? And Hope International was one that came back, and I called them and kind of checked them out and thought, well, they're really, really good. So getting back, though, of how to plan, once you turn 70 and a half, you can give $105,000 a year away tax-free, as part of your RMD, it's called a QCD, Qualified Charitable Distribution. So that was my financial planner said that's one way you can give money away.
Yep.
Another one, and then my estate plan. I want to leave my children some money, but still give money to charities. So I have one IRA going directly to charities. So that's 100% tax free. Because back when I started saving, I did not know about Roths. I don't even know if they had Roths around. So all of my money is in traditional IRAs, which is now taxed heavily. So then with my largest IRA, my estate lawyer suggested setting up 4 testamentary charitable remainder trusts.
CRTs.
Yeah. So what this is my children will receive 5% of the trust annually for the rest of their lives. And then the money will go to the charities that I designated. So remember that compound interest? The charities should get more than the original balance when they do receive it. And yet my children still receive an extra paycheck yearly for the rest of their lives.
Isn't that amazing?
That will equal the amount that I was giving.
Yes. It's so great. And there are so many wonderful strategies like that out there. And I'm so glad you have an advisor who is aware of these strategies, because it's really God math, where it's like 1 + 1 does not equal 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 100. And the fact that you can pay your heirs and the charity receives the funds at the end is amazing. People also do the reverse, where they, give millions of dollars to a charity, they put it at the beginning, so they call it a CLT, a charitable lead trust, and that charity gets a payment, let's say every year for 15 years, 20 years, depending on how they set it up. And then, like, if they gave the charity, $5 million at the end of that 15, 20 years, the $5 million comes back to the individual to distribute to the heirs. So it's amazing.
So back to the dilemma of giving charitable to charities. The Hope International is the one charity that followed up with me, and they invited me to a Zoom with Kim King, who wrote a book called Women Who Give. And right after that Zoom call, I went out and bought the book. And then she explains how to vet out charities. So that's something I now do with my giving. When I had 1 month to give, it was like, who needs it? But now that I can give my QCDs and yearly, now I'm really looking for where is my heart's desire. And in the book, she talked about a group called Women Doing Well. So that's how I was introduced to Women Doing Well. I looked up the website and then I signed up for an online pathway. So I went through the pathway with Vivian Flynn, and I found a group of like-minded women. So now I'm a facilitator with Women Doing Well. And the pathway encourages generosity by showing different videos, examples of women giving of their time and talents. So this summer, I led 20 elderly women from my church through the pathway, which actually had a profound effect on our lives. And we're not a rich group of women. Many are living just on Social Security. And one woman, Crystal, she decided, as the video suggested, to reach out to her neighbors in her apartment building. And she baked a cake for one, she brought a dinner to another, and she befriended a young mother with a 4-year-old boy. And she found out that this mom, who does attend our church too, that she had lost her job because she didn't have reliable daycare, and that her car had broken down, so she was having a hard time finding another job. She was 2 months behind in her rent, and Crystal helped get her community services for food and utility bills. And then Crystal came and talked to our group about helping this mom out. And so as a group, we were able to get her a new used car.
Mm.
We helped pay her car insurance up for 6 months. We were able to help get her leads on a job. And then her son, we helped him get into a preschool that was paid for by state vouchers. And so we have essentially become surrogate grandmas to her and her son.
Unbelievable.
So you don't have to have a lot of money to be generous, as you well know.
And to make such a huge impact in that woman's life and her son's life forever.
Right.
Wow. Are you planning on leading additional groups in the near future or next in January or?
Yeah, I'm not sure of how, because they're kind of changing the pathways around. So I haven't investigated. We just finished up 2 weeks ago, and then I went on vacation. So.
Yes, I think Women Doing Well is amazing, and they're always trying to listen to the audience and the facilitators. And so you're right, they have just recently kind of put the pathways together to have the 12 individual lessons, and a person can go in person. If there's a facilitator nearby, they can attend online. And everyone who comes through my group, I always encourage, finish the pathway and become a facilitator. Like, we're here in Southern California, and there are a handful of people who are facilitators and who are aware of Women Doing Well, but we could use so many more to spread the news. I don't know another program like Women Doing Well that does what it does. And I know, we didn't talk about your 2-word purpose statement, but inspiring hope, I can totally see why that is your purpose statement. And just, I love that you've taken what was challenging, and as Rick Warren says, the hard things, does it make us bitter or make us better? It's obviously made you way better. And, his other phrase is our mess becomes our message. And, out of what you lived through and seeing just the paycheck to paycheck and barely making it and wanting to save, and then, just God's faithfulness of multiplying his resources and to be able to give back to him, what he already owns in the first place, but you get the joy of helping a single mom like that. All the different wonderful ways that our generosity fuels his economy.
I agree.
Well, that's wonderful, Jill. What was it like going back, when you were the age you were to become an electrical engineer? I feel like you were really ahead of your time as a female in that space. Was that challenging, like in school and then also in the workplace when you were working in that R&D area of that company?
Yeah, because I was always the only woman engineer in my company. I wasn't in the packaging industry is really, really big though. If you think about, look in your kitchen cupboards, everything is packaged. So they have to have machines to weigh it and pack it. And so it's a big industry, but it's, engineering is very male dominated. So it was hard, but I thrived through it. Like I said, I'm kind of a workaholic, so I wanted my stuff always to be the best.
Which I'm sure it was, knowing you. Oh, that's so great. Well, any other ideas that you would say that could help a woman as she navigates her career? Maybe she's navigating raising young kids and feeling like, I don't have extra money. I feel like I'm pulled on all fronts. Like, how would you recommend, and especially right now, with inflation and how just all the prices seem to have gone up exponentially, how would you speak to her, to all of us, about saving and how you would approach it?
I'm really amazed at compound interest. I know I kind of hit that hard in this talk, but it's because I did not have anything. I came from nothing, and all I did was save and bought company stock. I mean, that's important too, because one of the stocks that I had bought has greatly magnified. And I would encourage every young person, and I always encourage my students, to start putting away money in your IRA and Roth IRA when you're in your 20s, if you can. And because if it's taken out of your paycheck before you get your paycheck, you don't notice it.
Right.
And then, but it will grow. If my kids were on this show, they would say I nailed this into their heads when they were young. And they're all pretty good savers now.
Right. No, that's good. And also, I used to work on I worked for a benefits consulting company, and we managed their entire 401k plan for a large defense contractor. So we had like 150,000 employees, and, those individuals received a company match, and many do, with a 401k plan. And that's always like free money that, you might be matched 6% of your salary, 8% sometimes. And when someone is not saving the 6% or the 8% to get the free 6 or 8%, that's just so sad. And when we would talk to some of these employees, and, they'd work so hard for 40 years, and then sometimes they were, retiring and pulling out a total of $30,000 in that 401k plan, could have had the match. It was really hard to listen to and watch. And so not everybody has the opportunity to have a match with a 401k plan, but everybody does have the opportunity, as you said, to at least invest in an IRA where you can put your money before it's been taxed into that account, so you have more money to put in, or you can do the Roth. And the Roth is important. I was meeting with our advisor recently, and she was just talking about, you just don't know, the tax rates and what they will be in the future. And everybody lives so much longer now. And so having that finely balanced portfolio where you have enough that's before tax money, but you also have the after tax money, and you can figure out the best combo when you're withdrawing later in retirement.
Right. I really do wish that I had known about Roth. And I did find out, maybe because I think Roth came out in the 70s, mid 70s, but they weren't really well known until maybe the 90s. And I had the opportunity, because I did do this, I converted 89,000 from my IRA to a Roth. And when tax time came, I did not have the money to pay the taxes on that 89,000. So I rechartered it back to.
Interesting. They let you do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they let me put it back in there, but I'm the loser now, because I would have had millions of dollars in a Roth, which I now have all in traditional. So
it's okay. Woulda, coulda, shoulda for all of us.
Right.
Yes. And, that's why also it is important. And I especially want to encourage the female listener to get a good advisor, get someone who has her or his, certified financial planner designation, someone who understands generosity. Sometimes that involves having the Kingdom Advisor designation, but it's hard sometimes to find that right advisor who wants to help you be charitable, help you save for retirement, save for college, all the different things. But sometimes people are afraid to find that expert, and they do whatever they've known from how they were raised, but because they think they don't have enough money for that advisor to work with them. And sure, there are, big name advisors where you have to have a minimum of X amount, which might be a large amount, but there are plenty of people getting started in their careers that want anyone to take as a client. And it doesn't matter if your balance is low, you at least have somebody who's gone through the schooling, gone through the certifications, and someone who you can meet with, at least twice a year and look at your plan for living, your plan for generosity, And also you want to make sure you've got that really good CPA. I mean, I know it's one thing to file your taxes on your own, but the people that have spent the years in the education, they understand the tax code, and it's worth paying that individual to file your taxes and just look at everything that is a part of your deductions and a part of your overall package. And we shouldn't be having surprises. Like at one point, my husband and I had an advisor where we would find out at tax time, like we owed this X amount. And we were like, why? Like, why are we so surprised right now? This shouldn't be the case, because we thought we knew we had a plan all year, but obviously that wasn't the case. And so we learned, okay, we need to have like quarterly meetings with our CPA to make sure that we're all on track, and no surprises. Nobody likes surprises.
Right.
Well, it's just so great talking with you, Jill. And I love how, talking about Kim King's book was a big impact for you. And I love how you've raised your 4 kids, you've overcome so much adversity, and you just have such a beautiful heart of generosity and gratefulness for all that God has done for you. So what would be, as we wrap this up, like what would you say would be a current book that you're reading, maybe a Bible verse that's guided you over the years, and then a recent bargain?
Well, for books, and I love to read. My first job was at B. Dalton Bookseller, and I don't think I ever took home a paycheck because I buy books. But for fiction, I really love Francine Rivers.
Yes.
Her Christian historical fiction. I just finished Unafraid. And for nonfiction, I'm reading 2 books right now by Richard J. Foster, Freedom of Simplicity and Learning Humility. And both of those, I have to, read and reread, because I really want to apply that simplicity to my life. Even if you might have money, I want to be content with where I'm at. So that ties into my favorite Bible verse, which is Philippians 4:11. For I have learned in whatsoever state I am in, therewith to be content. I had this Bible verse as my favorite when I was in college, because I went to college in Texas and I'm from Minnesota. So, and I kind of emphasized, I have learned to be content in whatever state I am in. But now I really have changed it to focus on the content. I just want to be content because God has blessed me with so much. And I just want to be happy.
No.
And then for bargains, there's a lot of good Christian movies out now, thank goodness. And so I love to go to the Tuesday afternoons where they're $5.
Nice. That's a great bargain. Well, we recently had on the podcast Cindy Bond, who produced the movie I Can Only Imagine. And she also produced Francine Rivers' book, Redeeming Love. And if you haven't read that book by Francine Rivers, that's a wonderful book as well. And then I love the series, which you might have read by Francine Rivers already, The Mark of the Lion, the trilogy. That's an incredible series of this slave girl who is a believer, but in Rome, and just how all the things she, gets through, and God's faithfulness. I need to reread that trilogy. I love that series. So
that's the first Francine Rivers trilogy I read. And I was actually going over to Rome. I brought all my kids and their families on a cruise to the Greek Isles in Rome, and we went to the Colosseum, and just because the way she writes her historical fiction, like in the Colosseum,
yes.
I could just imagine those gladiators there.
So true. Mm-hmm. A side note story. We were in Rome one time with our kids when they were little, and we had a 3-year-old, 5-year-old as the 2 youngest kids. And we had one of those jog strollers, and my husband was loading it into the back of the taxi. And it was one of those, like, honestly, 110 degrees Fahrenheit, so hot. And he'd been wearing this pouch under his shirt the whole time with his not his passport, but his credit cards. And sure enough, he put it in his pocket, like shortly before he loaded that stroller into the back of the cab. And, Rome is like the pickpocket city of the world. So I'm getting the kids in the cab, and he's like, hey, can you hand me my wallet? And I'm like, your wallet is not in this cab. And someone had pickpocketed him. And so we got in the cab, and the cab driver could speak a little bit of English. And he's like, okay, just a minute, and he took us in this like circle around this roundabout. And then he went to this trash can, and my husband got out, and they took with the driver, and they took the lid of this trash can off, and there were hundreds of leather wallets in this trash can, and all the credit cards, the cash, had been stolen. And fortunately, I had kept a card on me. I literally had it in my sock all day in the 110 degrees. And we were able to get back, to our hotel and everything where our passports were. But I love Rome, but my husband has traveled all over the world. And so if he gets pickpocketed there, believe me, it's easy to get pickpocketed there. So
yeah, wow.
Well, Jill, thank you so much. I think this is just a perfect capstone for this 3-part series with women doing well. And I do want to encourage everyone listening, go to womendoingwell.org and see if there's a group in your area, see if there's an online group you can join, and get started figuring out what your own, 2-word purpose statement is. Obviously, in this podcast, as Jill has told her story, we've talked about faith, we've talked about family, we've talked about finances, and each of us has a story, a beautiful story of God's redemption and what he wants to do in the future. And if you're listening going, wow, I didn't start saving until I was, too old, or it's too late now, it's never too late. It's always great to get started. And God is a God of miracles, and he can multiply, and he can do amazing things when we just give what's his, all back to him. So thank you for your generosity and being on this podcast. It's been a real privilege to have you on the show. And I can see why Julie Wilson said, oh, you need to have Jill Johnson for the plan for generosity. So God bless you. And I can't wait to just, in heaven, all of the organizations you've helped fund because of your diligence and saving and compound interest and God's faithfulness. I think you're going to be amazed in heaven when you look at all the lives that you touched. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Anytime. God bless.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.